All praise, glory, and honor is most certainly due to the Most High, the God of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and peace to you in the name of Jesus. This is your brother Elisha Israel of the household of faith. Count it truly a blessing each and every single time that I can come before to preach the word of God, and never do I count it as a light thing to do so. All right, brothers and sisters, I want to get right into today's lesson. Actually, I put the wrong title. It's actually Leviticus 21:4. So I have to change that. But we're dealing with Brother Nathan's question. Again, that's Leviticus 21:4. I put for some reason 11. Or 5, excuse me, 21:5. Leviticus 21:5, he had a question about. Leviticus 21:5. I know it says 11 in the description, but it's 5 actually. And the question was, can a brother shave his head bald? Okay. And a lot of brothers, a lot of Israelites say, come here and state that you can't shave your head. Okay. Let's go. So let's read it. This is Leviticus 21:5. Okay. Leviticus 21:5. So it says, in 5, it says, they shall not make baldness upon their head, neither shall they shave off the corner of their beard, nor make any cuttings in their flesh. In this particular lesson, I'm only dealing with the shaving of the head. Okay, that's it for now. So, and the reason I'm saying I'm doing that because I'm about to go extensively into this. So first and foremost, let's see who he's talking to. Okay, because he says don't shave your head, right? Or he says don't make baldness upon their head. Now this is what now let's go up into verse 1 and see who he's talking to specifically. It says, and the Lord said unto Moses, speak unto the priests, the sons of Aaron, and say unto them, there shall none be defiled for the dead among his people. Now this whole thing, these are regulations pertaining to the priests, right? Coming to the dead. It talks about who they can marry. It talks about a lot of things, okay, pertaining to the priests. Okay, so they have and it says don't make baldness on the head. And when you read it in the Hebrew, when you understand it, he's not talking about just shaving your head. We're gonna see he's not talking about just shaving your head. We're gonna look at it in some of the biblical texts as well. But what I wanted to show you what he's actually talking about. Okay, so just bear with me a little bit. I want to share. Give me one moment. I want to share the screen with you. Okay. Okay. This should say 5. Let me change it on here as well. Okay. So one thing we should understand is that this is not talking about just shaving your head bald. Okay. This is talking about the tonsure. And the tonsure is something that you find throughout various cultures. And what it was that the priests of these false deities, of these false gods, in honor of these priests, and particularly those who were associated with the sun, will find they would shave their heads in a tonsure. Okay, so let's look at this. This is from Egyptian Belief in Modern Thought, 1878. That's when it came out, by James Bonwick. This is on page 358. Excuse me. This is pertaining to the Egyptian priests. It says, personally, they were the essence of ceremonial cleanliness, excepting one lock of hair at the right side with some. They were a clean-shaven race. Every part of their body exposed to the growth of hair was kept clear. Okay? So that's what they did. They kept the razor, or they shaved their bodies. Okay? And they had a tonsure. Okay? The priest of Bacchus, Arabian. This is what Herodotus discovered. Herodotus was the so-called Greek father of history. Okay, his famous work is the Histories. Okay, Okay, so now this is on page 200, the 9 books of the history of Herodotus, translated from the text by T. Gaisford. This is from, with notes and a summary by P.E. Laurent in 1837, page 200. They, Arabians, acknowledge no other gods than Bacchus and Urania, and affirm that they cut their hair the same as Bacchus does. That is to say, they shear off all hair all around like a wheel and cut away all the corners about the temples. See, that's another thing. Around the temples, they have, sometimes you see tonsures where they have circles, but oftentimes you saw it on the top. See, and this is an example of a tonsure in the Buddhist tradition. All right. Here we see an example of an Egyptian tonsure. This is from the worship. This is from a book by John Garnier, The Worship of the Dead, or the Origin and Nature of Pagan Idolatry and its Bearing upon the Early History of Egypt and Babylonia, page 111. It says, the ceremony of tonsure, says Maurice, was an old practice of the priest of Mithra, the sun god of Persia. So those who honored Mithras, they dealt with a tonsure as well. So who in their tonsures represented the solar disk. The priests of Isis likewise shaved their heads. So did those of Osiris. So did those of pagan Rome. And then he's going to quote Herodotus. The Arabians says Herodotus acknowledged no other gods but Bacchus and Urania, the queen of heaven. And they say their hair is cut in the same way as Bacchus's is cut. Now they cut it in a circular form, shaving it round the temples. Sakyamuni is said to have shaved his head and directed his disciples to do so in obedience to a command of Vishnu. Again, these are all pagan deities, and they had a tonsure. Okay, the tonsure in Catholicism. This is from the Catholic Encyclopedia, published by Thomas Nelson Publishers in 1987, page 580. This is the tonsure in Catholicism. It reads, this was formerly the introduction ceremony by which a layman became a cleric. It was not a part of the sacrament of holy orders, but was preliminary to its reception. In the ceremony, the bishop or his delegate cut or snipped small portions from the hair of the candidate, front, back, two sides, and crown, inviting the candidate to accept the Lord as his portion. The candidate was then invested with the surplus. It is the practice of in some religious orders to shave the top of the head in a circle, leaving but a corona of hair around the crown as a permanent tonsure. Now, what is a corona? It's not just a drink from Mexico. Let's look. The corona is Latin for crown, is an aura of plasma that surrounds the sun. Okay? So you have this in all these pagan traditions, and Catholicism is no different. Here's a picture of Thomas Aquinas, who, as you see, has the tonsure. Okay, and when you look at it, one of the words you see, it's pertaining to spots on their heads, right? It's like you're doing it. This is what we should understand. This is what these pagans were doing. This is what the heathen were doing in honor of their gods. Okay. This is what they were doing in honor of their gods. All right. So when we read it in Leviticus 21 and verse 5, that's what I'm dealing with, verse 5, we should understand that that's what that's referring to. And just to show you that also, that the shaving of the head sometimes was done in various times. Sometimes it was done. Let's go to the book of Job. Because we're reading that, and again, it's my reading, my understanding of history and what that is actually saying. It's referring to a tonsure. Okay, but Job 1, we want to pick it up at verse 20, because this is after Job has lost all his health and he's lost all of his children. He lost his health. He lost his wealth and his progeny. Okay, he lost his kids, and then it says something, and so it says in verse 18, here comes the tidings, the terrible news that he received. Job 1:18 says, while he was yet speaking, there came also another and said, thy sons and thy daughters were eating and drinking wine in their eldest brother's house. And behold, there came a great wind from the wilderness and smote the four corners of the house, and it fell upon the young men, and they are dead, and I only am escaped alone to tell thee. Listen to what Job did. It says, then Job arose and rent his mantle and shaved his head and fell down upon the ground and worshipped and said, naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And all this Job sinned not, nor charged. It says something. In all this Job sinned not, nor charged God foolishly. Okay, so number one, two things are being done. And again, it says Leviticus 11. It should say Leviticus 21:5, not Leviticus 21:11. Okay, so if you're just tuning in. But one thing about it, this is commonly read, Leviticus 21:5 is commonly read, and it's stated that, oh, you just, you can't shave your head at all. But it's really talking about, I believe it to be talking about the tonsure. That's number one. Number two, is in that particular instance, is specifically talking to the priests. Okay, why the priests? Because you see throughout the various spiritual systems, whether you're talking about Bacchus, whether you're talking about Osiris, whether you're talking about pagan Rome, when you're talking about Mithras, they use, if you look at the Buddhists, even in honor of Vishnu in India, they used the tonsure in their priesthood, and he's telling them don't do that. Okay, even if you go all the way back to 18, all those regulations, he starts out by in chapter 18 of Leviticus, he's telling you don't do what these other nations do. Right? This is what the other people were doing, and right here we see Job shave his head. I don't believe he just cut his hair off. I believe it to be what he's showing. He shaved it off. And then it says, in all this Job sinned not. Right? So it don't seem like it was a sin. Let's go to and in this case it was mourning. Okay? Let's go to another place. Let's go to Acts of the Apostles. Acts of the Apostles. And again, if you're just tuning in, I'm dealing with Leviticus 21:5. Okay, in the shaving of hair. Acts of the Apostles. We're gonna pick it up at chapter 18. Acts of the Apostles, chapter 18. Acts of the Apostles, chapter 18, and we want to pick it up at verse 18. One verse, it says, and Paul after this tarried there yet a good while, and then took his leave of the brethren, and sailed thence into Syria, and with him Priscilla and Aquila, having shorn his head in Centuria, for he had a vow. Wait a minute, he cut his hair off. He cut his hair off because he had a vow. See, it was times when you would cut your hair off. Okay. Let's go to Numbers, the 6th chapter and verse 18. Numbers, the 6th chapter, verse 18. Because here we read about the Nazarite. Okay. It says in verse 6 and verse 13, it says, and this is the law of the Nazarite when the days of his separation are fulfilled. He shall be brought unto the door of the tabernacle. I'm in number 6 and 13. And he shall offer his offering unto the Lord, one he lamb of the first year without blemish for a burnt offering, and one ewe lamb of the first year without blemish for a sin offering, and one ram without blemish for a peace offering. And a basket of unleavened bread, cakes of fine flour mingled with oil, and wafers of unleavened bread anointed with oil, and their meat offering and their drink offerings. And the priest shall bring them before the Lord, and shall offer a sin offering and his burnt offering. And he shall offer the ram for a sacrifice of peace offerings unto the Lord with the basket of unleavened bread. The priest shall offer also his meat offering and his drink offering. And the Nazarite shall shave the head of his separation at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. and shall take the hair of the head of the separation and put it in the fire, which is under the sacrifice of the peace offerings. So in one instance, you had somebody who shaved their head for, as in mourning, and it said, in all this he's sin not, right? Then we read Paul shaved his head before he had a vow. Then we read the Nazarites at the end of their dedication or their days of separation that they would shave their heads. So am I telling you to go and shave your head? No, but what I'm saying is we have to look at this thing more, and really, even if, again, look at it in the original language as well, because it reads a tad differently. It reads a tad differently, as I showed you in the slideshow that I showed. Okay, so brother, is it a sin to shave your hair off? No, but if you're talking about putting a taunch in your head, like he tells you clearly not to do that. Okay. All right. So the next question, I'm gonna deal with brother, and I'm not gonna go into great depth. Caribbean Mac had a question. And again, if you're a couple things, if you're just tuning in, I'm dealing with Leviticus 21:5. That's what I just dealt with, even though the breakdown says 11. For some reason I put that, and that was a mistake. And I dealt with that. Now I'm gonna deal with brother Caribbean Mac's question. He says, is it correct to justify women preaching using Deborah the prophetess in Judges? Okay, so now you read about Deborah or Deborah. She was a judge. Now these judges, these in the book of Judges, this is the time period between or after the Exodus and the leadership of Joshua has ended. So you had Moshe or Moses, you had Yehoshua, Yeshua, who is Joshua. They're leading, right? And then they die, right? So you have these another generation comes, and then people are doing what they want, and then you have them falling away from the righteous path of the Torah or the instruction. And then because of that, you have this perpetual cycle of sin, crying out or sin, oppression for that sin from the surrounding peoples, the crying out to God, a deliverer coming to deliver the children of Israel out of their situation that's what the judges did. And then they go right back to sinning. It was a perpetual cycle. And the judges were not was not a bishop or an elder or even a priest like of old, because you had the bishops, and this is the system that's set up early on. Okay. So at this point, you still have priests. You see, these are the priests are the ones who bring forth the law to the people, the Torah, the instruction. These are the ones that do this. You see no precedent for women doing this. Okay. The judges were more of, even though Israel is a theocracy, okay, it's a theocracy. Even when you look at kings, when they did establish a king in the days of Samuel, the first king being Saul, the second being David and Solomon and so forth, you see they was written in a lot in the Torah that they had to copy out the law, because that was like the Constitution. Okay, but these judges are not standing before you as a priest would. That's not what they're doing. You can be both, but you're not necessarily both. Okay. For example, Samuel was a judge, but Samuel was a prophet. Samuel was also wearing the ephod as a priest, dedicated as a child. Okay, so yeah, so he had He was a Levite. He was a priest. He was a Levite priest. He was a prophet, and he also was a judge. Okay, he acted as like, you know, and then they asked for kings. Okay, so he was a type of judge, but nevertheless, so a judge doesn't necessarily mean you are a priest, right? Samson, for example, he's a judge, right? He wasn't a priest. So Deborah, okay, but the boy, she wasn't a priest. So you can't, a priestess, you don't see that. Now you see women being prophetesses, right? But being a prophetess doesn't mean you can stand up and preach, because the order is very clear on this. Okay, this order is very clear. A woman can be a president of a country. A woman can be a queen, a sole monarch, no king in sight. But according to the Bible, what she can't do is stand up and preach. You see no precedent for it whatsoever. Secondly, when we go to 1 Timothy 3, we see the qualifications. We see the qualifications of a bishop. We see the qualifications of a hold on one second. I might want to read something else. Give me a second. Let's just go here. I might read something in a second. But this is 1 Timothy 3 and verse 1. It says, this is a true saying. If a man desire the office of a bishop, he desire a good work. So now at this point, we have bishops. Okay, and bishops or elders, these are the ones who are basically over various congregations. Okay, you don't see women in this position. Why? Because it goes against the divine order. See, the divine order, brothers and sisters, is you have man following Christ. Well, you have Father Christ, man following Christ, and then that the woman. You don't see it any other way. So it said a bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife. Now I heard this, quite frankly, I was listening to something. I don't know how I came across it. And people need to look at things. It said one wife, understand here. It doesn't mean, if this is the qualification, this would disqualify if it just means literally one wife, like it means you have to be married to be a bishop, then that means Paul couldn't be a bishop. This disqualified him because he was a self-made eunuch. So what does it mean? It couldn't mean that. What it means is he's telling Timothy he should be the husband of, the word here, one is Mia in Greek, which means first wife. Okay, that's what it says. Now that is not law, but this is what it says. It says vigilant, sober, good behavior, given to hospitality, apt to teach. Then that's the criteria. Okay, so number one, we should understand that you don't see a woman even being qualified, nor do you see a precedent for it, right? It goes against the order of things. Secondly, not just no women could be a preacher, not the vast majority of men are not in a position to be a bishop. Why? Because it wasn't just being a man, there were various qualifications. Okay, and what is going on right now is that people simply want to do what they want to do. Okay, that's all it is. They want to do what they want to do. And, people can do that. You can do that, but you should understand that in doing so, you are in violation of what thus saith the Lord. It's just that simple. It's just that simple. So you don't see You don't see qualifications for a woman. You don't see any show. You'd have to show me a woman priest. You'd have to show me a woman bishop, a pastor, a preacher. You don't see it because that's not his order. That's not his order. Let's go to give me one moment. Let's go to let's go to, because the brother had another question. He said, what is the difference between fornication and adultery? Okay. So just so we know real quick, fornication is simply illicit sexual behavior. Okay. When you dealing in sexual behavior with somebody who's not your spouse. Okay. That's fornication. And it can come in various forms. Okay. That is now adultery is a little bit more, I don't want to say complicated, but we complicate it because we're looking at adultery from the Western, oftentimes from the Western monogamous position. So in the Western world, which is a pseudo monogamy, by the way, because it's not like people are only with one person. These people end up having 20, 30 partners and then talk about they dealing in monogamy and then will marry one of them after they've been with 30. But nevertheless, and then divorce that person and go to another one, right? That's not actual monogamy, but they claim to be monogamous. But nevertheless, what you have is you have the idea that one man and one woman, let's just say that, but even though that you're dealing with men and women and women in the West, but one man and one woman get married, right? If either one of them has a sexual relationship outside of that, in the Western world, that's considered adultery. Okay? The problem with this position, when you're looking at it and you asking from what's the position biblically, the problem with that stance is that the Bible, the people of the Bible, the Israelite culture, and in the Torah, it talks about polygyny. So adultery and polygyny and adultery and monogamy are two different things. Okay, so for example, if a man has intercourse with another woman, that's not necessarily, that's not adultery unless that woman is married. That's when it's adultery. Or the woman is betrothed to another man. It's the judgment for it is the exact same as if the woman was married and had already consummated the marriage. Okay, so that's the difference. So fornication is illicit sex, and it's like an umbrella. There's various forms of porneia or fornication, right? But then when you're talking about adultery, if you're talking about monogamy in the West, you're talking about one man, if he goes out of that relationship, or one woman, she goes out of that relationship. See, for in the Bible, biblically, and according to what Israel was doing, and what you find in the East, if a woman is with another man, automatically that's adultery. But a man be able to see, because he could take another wife, he could take a concubine, even if he was with another woman, that wouldn't necessarily be considered adultery. It just wouldn't. I was about to say something else, but yeah, that's basically the difference. That's basically the difference. He's dealing. If a man is, if he's married, and his adultery would be if he's dealing with another man's wife. Okay. From the woman, it'd be if she was dealing with any other man, she's committing adultery. So it's that's just what it is biblically. People have an issue with that, but that's just what it is, because the two views of marriage were different. Okay, so you have to encompass all, because when it comes to the Bible, a man could be like Jesus and Paul. They could be like not married at all. They could be married to one woman and be monogamous, or they could deal in polygyny, the three. But in the Western world, you basically only accept one. So that actually, from that perspective, the issue of adultery is different. Okay, so that's the difference. Like people not married, just sleep with any and everybody. That's fornication. Okay, that's fornication. All right, so that's the difference. All right, and with that, brothers and sisters, I want to remind you that we're at the Household of Faith, meet every Sabbath at 5925 West 25th Avenue in Gary, Indiana, at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. You can check us out right here on the IsraelTeach YouTube channel, as well as at www.IsraelTeach.org. If you've been edified by the ministry, you can leave a donation at our website at www.IsraelTeach.org. IsraelTeach. What else? Like the video, and I think that's it, brothers and sisters. I think that's it. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your Sabbath. Oh, if you have questions, and I can't even read the messages right now because I had to do this a different way in order to show that slide. So if you have messages or questions rather, you can leave them in the chat if you haven't done so. I don't even see the chat right now. Also, you could email us. Okay, you could send up questions that way, and I still have some more questions to get to. And with that, brothers and sisters, again, always hope that you were edified. I pray that you were edified.